I'm not crazy. My reality is just prettier than yours, was a Facebook status that went around last year. I'm not crazy. My reality is just prettier than yours. This very day, we know that Moses and Jesus would probably have posted that today. When Moses went up that mountain, he talked to God face to face and came back down with a shining face, and they had to put a veil over him. That's not our reality. That is way too pretty for our reality, way too weird. Same thing Jesus, a few generations later, up on that mountain with his buddies, and then people of old that are dead, but there in light and face and reality. They are crazy, and their reality is prettier. So, there's more than one world. We know that for sure. Because sometimes people are that crazy, and sometimes we're ourselves that crazy. The thing is that, for the most part, we live in multiple worlds anyway. A couple of weeks ago, when I took our confirmation class to camp, we explored again 5 theological worlds in which people spent most of their thinking, believing, and living. And I'm starting with the 5th one to work us down to number 1. That is the one we look at today on Transfiguration Sunday, that weird thing with Jesus on the mountain. The 5th world is the one of suffering and endurance. When you live in that spiritual world, you got nothing left. There's no God, there's no hope. Life is just dark. In the Psalms, we hear those stories in the Bible. Jesus shouting on the cross, "Why have you forsaken me?" And in that darkest valley, to have someone who is with you, to hold up your head, to hug you, to endure that with you, and not point toward hope. Just be there with you in that darkness. That world of suffering and endurance is a totally unique one. In the 4th world, that is about condemnation and forgiveness, where people are basically looking for a loving God that would eventually rescue them. Or in the 3rd world, where people are looking for a purpose, a meaning, a mission, to help people, to do food drives, to feed and clothe the hungry and naked and everything. Or in the 2nd world, about conflict, can't we all just get along? Do we always have to fight? Don't we all believe in the same God anyway? Couldn't there be more peace? And when you live in those separate worlds, you don't speak the same language. You don't live the same reality. You don't do the same things. Yet we all call them church sometime. We're not. Those are spiritual worlds in which people live, and we got to deal with all those in our pews here, in our daily lives, at work, in the store. People live in those worlds, and they overlap at times, and they don't. But they create those weird moments where we seem to not even speak the same language, where we're on that mountaintop and the dazzling light and the face and the reality and crazy. That's what we are. The spiritual world that this Sunday is about is that of separation and reunion. On those mountaintops with Moses and Jesus and Elijah and God and tablets and light, those are thin places. Thin places where that wall between the divine and the mundane, between creator and creation, between God and human, is very thin. where you can see a glimpse of heaven, or at least a reflection of it, or, as Celtic spirituality puts it, cracked doors that actually should be shut but are not quite. It's one of those Sundays where heaven and earth are closer together than usual. A glimpse of heaven that we can see throughout our reality. Normally we don't see heaven all that much, but those weird stories on those mountaintops are a reminder that our reality is not all there is. And there's a reason we have this Sunday at the beginning of the season of Lent, because Lent brings more and more of that. When next Wednesday we head over to St. Mary's Episcopal Church to get our ash crosses on our foreheads, Ash Wednesday reminds us of our mortality that breaks into life, usually in a scary, not desirable way. But that Wednesday, we remind ourselves of being subject to death, basically. From dust you came, to dust you shall return. That's a powerful reminder. And that doesn't really match our reality, because usually we want to live, not talk about death. But touching that hope that even in dust and ashes, we're still in God's hands. Ash Wednesday is a good reminder that we're not stuck in this reality. Actually, the entire season of Lent makes us sensitive for the transparencies between here and there, and now and then, divine and human. Cracked doors in heaven. Lent can create a sense of awe that we can create for ourselves. It opens a cosmic scale to our little thinking, bigger realities. When Psalm 90 says, "For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, or like a watch in the night." In God's reality, our understanding of time really doesn't apply all that much. Think about death in that regard. 1,000 years are like a night. What's our death or our life in those scales? Or as Psalm 8 asks, what are human beings that you're mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? Not much, but still God cares somehow. Cracked doors. When we take that seriously, that sense of reality, with eons and life and death at stake, that reality is not really prettier than ours, but it is scarier, because it's way too big for us to comprehend or manage. That means God is freer than we are. That means God's reality is bigger than ours. It's not my sweet little Jesus that I can just handle and manage on Sundays. Those cracked doors basically shake my world, because my world is not all there is. And we see that in the story that we heard. Peter, James, and John were there with Jesus on that mountain. And once that weird thing with a voice from heaven and a light happens, what does Peter do? He starts jabbering. Okay, we should erect a monument and mark this very significant spot, because big things happened here. Let's build something. He wanted to build a statue, a monument, something that commemorates this important event. It was great and big, and let's do something about it. That's what we that's what we usually do. We build churches. We create special memories of special moments. We want to keep them and manage them and preserve them going forward. Problem for Peter was there came that voice from heaven that said, "Shut up! Listen." Don't do, don't talk, listen. Listen to Jesus, because he is my Son that I sent to you, for you to listen, not to build more monuments. Because that guy Jesus that I sent you, he's the King of all times and places. Those inside of your cracked doors and realities beyond. In this one man, heaven and earth come together. That's what the season of Lent is about. Human and divine together. That is the reunion of that separation between Creator and creation. Human and divine, mortal and immortal, perishable, imperishable, as Paul calls it. That's where the big realities come together, in that one man. You can't tell those stories with a straight face, because they're weird. And we need weird stories to help us bridge those realities. Because when you see those cracked doors in heaven, those thin places, how can you talk about those? Not really. You need weird stories, like the reminders of the stories we heard. And from there come our weird traditions. We created a whole season of weirdness we call Lent. 40 days until Easter. That time that Jesus spent in the desert, we spent literally in the desert of our weird experiences in those thin places. Traditionally, that was a weird season of fasting, where you would have to do no meat, dairy products. For Catholics, the remainder is that Fridays are fish days. But really, people of many traditions picked up on that season of making something special, adding something to your routine, changing things around a little. For me this year, it's about getting up earlier. It's not that I don't do things anymore, but I add a new practice, and that is getting up at 5:30. Sounds tough, but what that has done for me, I've started already, even though the season hasn't started yet. But what that does, those first couple of hours that I got all by myself, kids are still in bed. After those 2 hours, I did everything I wanted to accomplish in the day. After that day cannot harm me in any way anymore. I'm on top of the world, if it works out. Some mornings it doesn't. But that's a weird experience. Rushing all day, I still do that. But that basic feeling of those early morning hours carries me through the day. That crack in my time frame, so to speak, changes not my world, but at least my day, and maybe those few weeks of Lent, and we'll see where that habit goes. Thin places that change things. So I'm not going to give up certain foods or anything. I'm getting up earlier. What is it that you're trying to do for Lent? Anybody thought of anything? The usual ones are good. There's nothing wrong with those. Any plans?
I'm going to listen more and talk less.
Woo!
This sweets and alcohol.
Any more plans for the season?
Well, being raised LDS, I didn't know what Lent even is, so I'm just learning Lent. Does that count?
Learning Lent counts, totally. So watching your diet, exercising more, reading more, learning more, listening more, getting up earlier. Pick your practice, create your own. It's a great season to try things, and we all live in different theological worlds. We're on different journeys, but sharing weird experiences is a powerful thing. Let's try that for the season. So, Lent starts this coming week with Ash Wednesday. But even before that, it's weird. And that is the night before. That is Shrove Tuesday, where we also go to our Episcopal neighbors and indulge in overeating pancakes for supper. That's always a wonderful bacon night. But it's also our version of Carnival, Mardi Gras, whatever you call it, growing up. Where I come from in Germany, last Thursday, there was Women's Carnival. And that is turning things upside down. So what happens is the women rush to City Hall. The mayor symbolically hands them the keys to the city. And all day, guys will always protect or put on their oldest ties, neckties that is, because they're always cut off. That's what the day is all about, cutting off neckties and putting things upside down, turning things around, messing with reality. The women take over the city. Clothing is ridiculed, making reality not prettier but more chaotic, I guess. That's how you kick off the season, with wild parties before the fast of Lent. We do the strangest things throughout the church year to remind ourselves that there's more than the usual. We cut trees dead and put them in our living rooms for weeks on end. Makes no sense. We create thin places for ourselves to bridge our realities. May this Lent season help those of us who are on that journey to find reunion in that separation. May this experience lift the veil that shrouds our existence. Amen.